Okay, so here we go. Power rankings, yippee-ki-yay, all that wonderful stuff. There's been some movement this week. A team dropped by 11, a team rose by 8, a team dropped by 8, and a team rose by 9, a team rose by 7. So there are some fan bases who may not have been happy, who may be happy, and there are some that were happy that are going to be angry coming out of tonight because that's kind of how these things work. At number 31, it shouldn't surprise anybody that the LA Kings are 31. They are having a rough start to the season. The first quarter has not been pleasant for the LA Kings, and so they remain in 31st. They had a gutsy win along the way over the Hawks, but the Hawks standing isn't exactly fantastic either, so it didn't really help them at the end of the day. At 30th, and this one pained me, Vegas. They dropped 2 spots. That is the lowest they've been on power rankings. These are 2 Pacific Division teams. This does not bode well for the Pacific Division, and it's a situation that's made worse by the fact that it doesn't seem like it matters where they play right now. Tomorrow they're playing Edmonton, and that I believe it's tomorrow they're playing Edmonton. That's gonna be interesting because when they play the Oilers should be kind of cheesed off after the loss to Calgary tonight. So yeah, that could be rough. 29th. Let's not leave the Pacific Division, shall we? Let's not say we did. The Anaheim Ducks are in 29th place, which says a lot about the state of the Pacific Division right now, and for the Ducks. And I'm really surprised they haven't made a move behind the bench yet. I'm being completely honest. I'm really surprised. I don't expect Gallant to have any problem keeping his job. The Kings have already made a move behind the bench. The Ducks haven't, and yet in 29th, they move up 1 spot from last week. But let's be honest, the Ducks aren't exactly having a fantastic season. So rough year for them. Number 28, dropping 3 spots from last week, is St. Louis. If only we could get some consistency from the Blues. And it's an issue that they've had all year, and it just seems like it gets worse every week because they're not getting out of it. They're not breaking through. So yeah, St. Louis, and this is the West dominating the lowest ranks right now on the power rankings. So by my count, the West is not as solid as the East. The East is a better conference right now. Number 27, and adding to that narrative, are the Hawks. The Hawks, mired in a losing streak of sorts that they broke out of with a 1-0 win over St. Louis, which helped contribute to St. Louis being this low. They then lose against the Kings in a shootout, and I'm not sure what we're getting with Chicago right now, but it feels like this year has become a rebuild year, and maybe Chicago ends up with Jack Hughes at the end of the year, which wouldn't impress the fans outside of Chicago. But hey, for fans in Chicago, that might be the absolute ultimate in consolation prizes. That being said, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Western Conference teams at the bottom. Isn't this fun? Number 26, finally breaking that up, is New Jersey. New Jersey drops 2 spots from last week. Chicago, of course, is up 2 spots from last week, but it's still not where they want to be. New Jersey dropping into the bottom row. That drop of 2 spots is tough, and it's not helped by their loss at home against Detroit today. They were ahead 2-0. They lose at 3-2 in overtime. It's another rough loss for the New Jersey Devils, and they stay right towards the bottom of the standings. Number 25, dropping 3 spots from last week, is Carolina. Tonight they didn't take a whole ton of shots, but they only got 1 goal. So Carolina now takes their spot. Oh wait, I had that upside down. Oh, Carolina fans for a moment they were like, he's got that upside down. What's he doing? I've said before that when I put Carolina's upside down, I qualify the team as being in distress. If you turn a flag upside down, it means the country or whatever entity that is, they're in distress. So I have no problem saying right now that yes, if I had left Carolina upside down, they're in distress. They've dropped into the bottom row. That's, I believe, the first time this year they've been in the bottom row, and it is another rough-looking season that they're going through there. At number 24, down 1 spot from last week, and they had some up and down results. The New York Rangers are really hard to peg down right now. They really are. That 7-5 loss against the Islanders is the one thing that kept them from actually moving up this week. They look like they might be in for some significant improvement, and they still could be. But they end up actually taking one step back because there's a team that took some steps forward, but they've been taking steps back over the last few days too. Number 23, dropping like a rock. These guys are dropping 8 spots. It's Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh Penguins drop 8 spots to number 23. 8. I don't know if there are... I don't know what the percentage is of Penguins fans that are panicked. Maybe that needs to be a poll on the channel. Just a very simple poll on whether or not people still believe Pittsburgh's going to be a playoff team. Because they don't look like one. They're not playing like one. And you can put it on the defense in this one. I really believe that. Like, their offensive numbers are still good. I think their goaltenders are still average. And average goaltending will get you a long way with Pittsburgh's offense. But with the defense not being average, being well below average, it's a rough time to be a Pittsburgh fan. Number 22, moving up 4 spots. Florida was in for a huge, huge increase. And then the last couple of games have been a huge downer. So they would have been here. Those last couple of games dragged them right back down. Florida went up big time in the middle of the week. Have dropped substantially since then. So I know people are going to say, oh, you've got Florida at 22, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they've dropped. They have definitely dropped. And while it may be an increase from where they were last Saturday, there are some concerns if you're a Florida fan right now. And Luongo's numbers have started to look kind of pedestrian by comparison. Number 21. Not moving from last week. Depends on the night. Really depends on the night with Ottawa. Ottawa dropped during the week. They rose during the week. They were all over the board. And then Saturday, they're right smack dab where I had them last Saturday. The Ottawa Senators, I don't know where they're going to end up at the end of the year, but they're not going to end up 31st. I really can't see them bottoming out. Again, this is a team that does not have their number 1 draft pick, and they know they don't have their number 1 draft pick. So they don't have any problem with the fact that, hey, we've got to go out there and play. Although I will say this too, players don't care if they get the number 1 overall draft pick. They're not going out there and tanking for a draft pick. GMs will try to put a really bad team on the ice to get that number 1 draft pick. Coaches sometimes aren't coaching necessarily for the win. They're coaching for skills and whatnot because they know they're not going anywhere and they might as well try to get that top draft pick. But players will always play to the best of their ability, and they don't care about draft picks. Number 20, dropping 2 spots from last week, is Philly. So you have West, 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 and then East, 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 East. That's just how things have been falling lately. And in Philly's case, it's falling. And if Elliott's out for 2 weeks as reported, if we're going to see 2 weeks of no Elliott, I am concerned about Pickard as a goaltender for the next 2 weeks. If that's where things are headed, if Neuvirth's not going to be able to play and it's going to be Pickard, that's a concern. Absolutely a huge concern for Philly. And we'll see where they end up at the end of this week. Number 19, moving up 8 spots from last week. I had Detroit fans upset with me last week and saying, we won, and why did we not move up? We stayed in the same spot. So they were 27th last week, and they were 27th the week before. And I said, they keep playing the way they have been, they'll move up. That's how this board works. And I don't manipulate the board. I didn't do any market, I call them market corrections. I didn't do any of those this week because we're basically settled out as to where everybody is. Detroit legit moves up this far, and it was a huge week for them. And that comeback win over New Jersey is another example of that. They're at 500 now. They're playing very solid hockey, and they're in the running. As much as we don't see them that way, they're absolutely in the running. Number 18, falling out of the running quickly, dropping 11 spots from last week. It's the Canucks. Boy, I tell you, I don't know where to start with this. They lost every game on the road this week after I did that video, all in regulation, and then they lost 1 at home tonight. So that's 4 regulation losses. That drops you 11 spots on the board because other teams are passing you while you're dropping. So it was a pretty merciless week to Vancouver. In fact, by Monday, Vancouver, I believe, was in 11th, and now it's Saturday, and they're down to 18th. and they could drop even further. Remember, they got Winnipeg coming to town on Monday. Ugh. Yeah, this could absolutely get a lot worse for them, and we could see Vancouver down in death row down here, not too long from now. It's rough. It's absolutely rough for them. A lot of games, a lot of injuries, and it's all piling up, and the team looks kind of spent, especially late in the games. They're unable to hold leads. They're unable to seemingly come up with those big goals. 17th, dropping 4 spots, Edmonton. The Oilers showed tonight that they can win their share of fights. They got a lot of toughness in that lineup, but they struggled to get goals beyond McDavid. They pointed out that McDavid, Draisaitl, and is it Chason that's the other one that they said had 48% of their goals? It's a bad number. When 48% of your offense comes from 3 players, you don't have enough depth offensively. And Oiler fans get upset when I mention it, but I only mention it because it's absolutely what's been happening with the Oilers this year. Much the same as last year. They don't look right now like a team that's going to make the playoffs. There's still plenty of time to turn it around, but they don't look like a playoff team. And I know people want to throw it on Talbot. They want to throw it on this guy, that guy. They want to point at Chiarelli. At the end of the day, they just don't look like a playoff team right now. Number 16, moving up 3 spots from last week, Arizona. So Arizona, you see it's Kachina, but it's Arizona. The Arizona Coyotes are tough to peg right now. And they move up beyond Philly. They move up beyond Vancouver. They move up beyond Edmonton because they had a better week. And they did lose tonight 2-1 against Boston, but they played very well. Halak robbed them on occasion. And they've beaten some pretty darn good teams. Arizona has shown themselves to be a pretty solid team when they need to be. And I would not be surprised to see Arizona, not necessarily a buyer at the deadline, but for the first time in a very long time, not being sellers and trying to make the right moves in order to make the playoffs. And if they can do that, it's a huge win for John Chayka and the management team in Arizona. Number 15, moving up 5 spots from last week. So when teams ahead of you start dropping like flies, it's easier to move up. Number 15 is the Islanders, who had a pretty good week. The Islanders have been up and down this year, but I'm not sure if this is the highest they've been. I don't think so. I think they've been up in 12 or 11 area. Anyways, because I do these every single day, and I only film it on Saturday, I'm tracking this every single day, so I'm not sure if they've been higher in any of the videos. But the Islanders are playing well. And you can chalk it up to, well, they've been lucky here, they've been lucky there. You know what? The Islanders are just flat out playing well. They're having a good run. And if you're an Islanders fan, there's some hope. And there was not a whole lot in the offseason, especially when Tavares left. But solid coaching, solid defense, and especially solid goaltending will take you a long way in this league. Number 14, moving up 2 spots from where they were last week, Dallas. I am still not sure what we have with Dallas, but I know this. If they can get a shutout with that blue line in the condition that it's in right now, it's very impressive. It's a very, very impressive thing that they've done. And, Boston does struggle to score. It was the 4th time they've been shut out this year. But at the end of the day, Dallas gets that shutout for Bishop. And things could very well be turning around for Dallas. They might be turning a corner. Now, sometimes they turn that corner and it's just a brick wall waiting for them when they round it. But right now, I'll just say turning the corner, and we'll see. Number 13, dropping 1 spot from last week, is Colorado. Inconsistency is the rage in Colorado as well. But they're still good enough that I think they should be a playoff team. Keep in mind the Pacific is a yard sale for the most part, which could absolutely help them. All right, I had to pause there because I had to do the ad breaks and the review video for tonight. But yeah, Colorado is an up and down team, but the odds are they probably get there at the end of the year, but we'll see. Speaking of potentially out of the playoffs, and 12th on the board, dropping 2 spots from last week, is Washington. I don't know. I know that losing Kuznetsov, Oshie, and Holtby, those are all huge. We cannot overstate any of those 3 injuries. And I don't know how long they're going to go on for, but None of them are small injuries. That being said, Washington has a decent record, but not enough to get them into the playoffs right now. That being said, they have games in hand on a couple of teams that are ahead of them, I believe. And again, they sort of meandering. And this is kind of where they were for a lot of last season. For very much of last season's power rankings, I had Washington like 12th, 15th, 14th. They were always in and around. They weren't top row very often. If they were, they didn't stay there very long. This feels a lot like last season. That being said, there are teams behind them that are playing well. The Islanders come to mind. And then, the Rangers. The Rangers could make an absolutely huge move this week based on the fact that there are some teams that are falling down to meet them. Detroit's coming up. Florida is dropping, even though I've said they've moved up 4 spots in a week. But they've dropped from where they were, and Pittsburgh's dropping too. So there's some tremendous movement going on in the middle of the board. And a team like Washington could find themselves down in this area by next week based on some of the teams that are behind them. But they would need... Anyways, not going to get into that too much. Number 11, dropping 5 spots from last week, is Calgary. The win over Edmonton tonight is huge, and it leaves them in the position where they could... they can challenge for first place in the division. They didn't have a great week. They've lost 3 out of 4. I believe that was 3 out of 4 coming into tonight. And they've had some rough spots. And I know people are going to point to Mike Smith, which is fine, but it's all part and parcel of how things work, that they will drop down the chart based on their win-loss record. I still think they can turn it around tonight against Edmonton. Could be a huge jumping-off point for them. We'll see if that's the case or not, but Calgary is 11th on the board. Number 10, moving up 7 spots from last week, is Columbus. See? I've told Columbus fans, that this is how this works. That now that Columbus is winning games in regulation, they're winning them with some conviction. They're winning them well. They're playing consistently. They're not having that crappy game after the good game. Now Columbus has moved up the chart quite heavily. They're top 10. And I could have had them in 9th tonight. I didn't because the team that they would have passed for 9th had a good night. In 9th place, staying steady from last week, is Montreal. So last week I had a lot of Montreal fans saying, 9th seems a little high. We don't think we're 9th. I'll be interested to know if Montreal fans think they're 9th now. They get the win on the road that they needed tonight, and they had a pretty good week. Despite the fact they got killed by Edmonton, they did get the wins over Calgary and Vancouver. So they stay in the same spot as last week, but at one point this week, they may have very well been in the top row. In fact, they may have been in the top row pending a result tonight. And that result tonight saw San Jose move up 3 spots overall this week into 8th. Good news for San Jose. They have started to look like the team that we said should be the top team in the division. Both myself and the channel, through vote, said that San Jose should be number 1 in the division. And so far, they are. They've had some spotty starts along the way. They were 11th last week. Now they're 8th. I think with this division being what it is, I think San Jose could be playing games in February that they know aren't that important because they've already got the division sewn up. This may end up being one of those divisions that gets run away with. But for that to happen, San Jose has to have the consistent goaltending numbers. And Carlson has to keep up what he started doing this week. He's finally started getting those points. He's up to 12 points now. He was at 7 coming into this week. He was stuck at 7 for a while. If he can continue to produce, if their power play gets things going, San Jose can run away with the division. Number 7, dropping 3 spots from last week, is Minnesota. They were hurt by that loss tonight against Buffalo. If not for that loss against Buffalo, they likely only would have dropped 1 spot from last week. But the loss against Buffalo drops them down. A win over Vancouver dropped Vancouver down quite heavily. Didn't really aid them a whole lot in that one. Bachman gave away a couple here and there. And again, with all the injuries and everything else, the amount of games the Canucks had played. But the loss at home against Buffalo tonight, that hurt. That being said, they're still in the top row. And they're still seen as a team that's very surprisingly a contender. Number 6. Moving up 2 spots from last week is Boston. Boston, I still don't see them really as a solid contender. However, they're starting to get that depth scoring, and the fact they're winning games while they're missing 5 of their top 6 defensemen, that's crazy. And they come out of Arizona with a 2-1 win tonight, down 5 out of 6 defensemen. They get a point against Dallas last night. They lose a game 1-0 in overtime, down 5 of their 6 defensemen. So, Boston absolutely has my respect in that. They didn't have a great week, but they didn't have a horrible week either. And their overall game seems to be shaping up relatively well. Again, I don't want to say they're contenders because I really, at the end of the day, I look at their goaltending and think, do I see Halak or Rask winning a best-of-7 series right now against any of the other playoff goaltenders? Say against a Carey Price or against a Vasilevsky or against an Anderson? And my honest answer right now would be no. Number 5, moving up 9 spots from last week. And their fan base has to be like, wait, where are we? Did he forget about us? Did he drop us off the board? No, here's Buffalo. And I'm going to tell you right now that why I'm using these magnets tonight is because there was a comment made last week about me using the Buffaslug and saying, don't use the Buffaslug. Okay. So I went to a set of magnets that has even older logos for everybody. And I have logo sets that go back. I'm pretty sure I have logo sets that go back even further. And I want to say this too, and I know this isn't related to Buffalo. I'll get to Buffalo. These sets of stickers that you see that I use for my magnets, they don't make these anymore. I don't know why. I can get the tiny magnets because they still make the tiny stickers. This size, they just don't make them because the vending machines, it doesn't seem like they make those sets anymore. And what they make are just plain logos. There's nothing fun about them. There's no fun holograms. There's no fun anything with it. It's just, here's the logo. There you go. You're done. So that's why I use the old ones. That's why I order old ones and I make magnets out of them because I think it's fun. And in the case of Buffalo, you know what's fun? Winning. Winning is fun. Adalene has started to look like the guy who was drafted first overall. He started to look like the guy that they drafted to fix their blue line, and he may very well be doing that. Skinner's off to an incredible start to the season, playing the best hockey of his entire career, bar none. Eichel has been lights out as well. Middlestad's showing signs of becoming the player that he was supposed to be. So I know Canuck fans were dumping a lot on me a week and a half ago because of my concerns over Pettersson being drafted where he was, and pointing out that Middlestad hasn't turned around for Buffalo. He's starting to. Don't rule out Middlestad yet. It's still early in the season, and while Pettersson's had an amazing start and he got a goal tonight and everything, there's a lot of rookies who are going to end up probably taking a run at that Calder. Number 4, down 3 spots from last week, is Nashville. And I know Nashville fans are probably not going to be happy at being down at number 4, but they had a rough week. And they had to come back from a goal down against the Kings, the team down here in 31st. Peterson played very, very well for the Kings. Agreed. Fine. But Nashville showing some cracks. And again, it is impossible to go from wire to wire as the best team in the league. It just doesn't happen. So Nashville will get back up to number 1 at some point on the board. Might even be as soon as next week. Number 3, moving up 1 spot from last week, is Toronto. And I had a hard time with whether they were going to be in 2nd or 3rd. And it really depended on that Tampa game. If Philly had beaten Tampa in overtime today, we would see Toronto in 2nd. And if anybody has any thoughts about, Toronto isn't that good, they're 14-6 now. They have 28 points in 20 games. That means they are on pace right now for about 118 or 119 points. That's mostly without Matthews. That's without Nylander. That is with the same blue line that coming into this season a lot of us had concerns with, and Morgan Riley's been absolutely amazing for them on that blue line. So Toronto is absolutely worthy of that 3rd spot on the board and could end up finding themselves in 1st again at some point. The Leafs have not dropped further than, I think, 5th is the farthest they've dropped. If you look back on videos I was doing a year ago on power rankings, Toronto was really wildly all over the place. This year they're very consistent, which points to them actually becoming a Stanley Cup contender this year. That consistency is admirable. Number 2 on the board, Tampa. They would have been number one this week. They had some tough games, and Winnipeg manages to find themselves in first. It's a tentative first place. I had debated about whether or not to have Tampa in first based on the result against Philly, but the nature of that win over Philly meant that for me they stayed in second, and I left Winnipeg up there in first. Now Winnipeg, of course, has their next game is in Vancouver on Monday. I will have a seat to watch that one live, but Winnipeg's in an they're in an interesting spot right now, aren't they? Because they're playing very well, and I'm glad that they've continued to show that they're one of the better teams in the league. Because they just are. They're playing very, very well right now. And if you're a Winnipeg fan, you have to feel good about the fact that there's a lot of depth scoring in there. There's some toughness. There's a little bit of everything on Winnipeg. The goaltending's been pretty solid, whether it's the backup or the starter. It hasn't really mattered. And for me, right now, they're playing the best hockey in the league. Tampa isn't that far off. I would not be surprised to see Tampa potentially fall a little bit next week with a couple of losses due to Domingue being in there instead of Vasilevsky. And as I said, I expect Nashville at some point to jump back up to first. But for this week, it didn't happen. Because there's people who come in and want to be ornery. And, I'll do... Well, wait. No, I'm not going to do that. Let's put them there. Them there. Yeah, that'll work. And, no, that's ridiculous. That'll work better. There we go. No, that's even ridiculouser. Ridiculouser is a word. It's a word. Go look it up. Don't look it up. No, look at it. Don't look it up. Okay. All right. So there you can see the Canucks moved up based on the fact that Pettersson got that goal tonight. The Wings have been playing absolutely amazing hockey. Almost the best hockey in the league, only to be eclipsed by the Montreal Canadiens. The Kings, their losses made them better this week. I think we're going to see the trust exercises that the Willie Desjardins talking about. A lot of trust falls going on during pregame warm-ups. Trust falls are going to make LA so much better. And in the case of the Vegas Golden Knights, they're losing on purpose is what we found out this week. And they're just trying to build dramatic tension so they can burst through in that last 60 games of the season. Absolutely brilliant planning by them, I have to say. And for the Ducks, I think changing their name back to Mighty Ducks will make them truly mighty again. It's because they took the Mighty out, they started losing. And once they figured that out, smack damn, they're right in the middle. The Senators... what can be said, Erik Karlsson being traded back to the Senators today was a huge boon for them, and I anticipate them having nothing but wonderful things going on. And I was surprised at Duchesne going to the Sharks, but hey, what are you going to do? And down at the bottom are the Islanders because they are, and the Predators are in 30th because they're the Predators. It's not right. And the Bruins, screw them, they're 29th. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And I'll talk to you again soon.